So we are coming to the end of this unit. For better or for worse, here we go, the fall of Napoleon. So this guy appears to be invincible. He's conquered the parts of the world that mattered at that time. He had a great desire for power. He wanted more and more and more. And this led him to make mistakes. 3 in particular proved particularly disastrous. 1, he introduced the continental system, and what this did was basically make it illegal to trade with the British, closed all European ports to British trade. Mistake number 1. Because it didn't work, right? Because we know at this time Britain has not the empire it would become in later years, but Britain has colonies. Britain has means of getting goods and services that it couldn't, that closing the continent off to it wouldn't matter. He hoped that the continental system would destroy Britain's economy. It obviously didn't. Napoleon overthrew the Spanish monarchy and installed his brother Joseph. And the Spanish didn't like that one little bit. That was mistake number 2. That really, in a way, opened up a second front, because Wellington, the future Duke of Wellington at that time, he was Arthur Wellesley, got in through Portugal, and with the Portuguese army's help and the British army, such as it was at the time, they pushed their way through Portugal, up through Spain, and won a series of victory after victory after victory. Big mistake on Napoleon's part. If the Emperor Napoleon decides to make war, it is possible, even probable, that we shall be defeated. But the Spaniards have frequently been defeated, and they are not beaten, nor have they surrendered, said the French ambassador in Spain. So Spanish fighters, called guerrillas, repeatedly ambushed the French forces. Very effectively, 300,000 French troops were killed in the 5 years after Joseph Bonaparte becomes King of Spain. Very effective. Mistake number 3, we talked about this a little earlier, the invasion of Russia. Napoleon orders this because Tsar Alexander I refuses to stop trading with Britain. Didn't work. His Grand Army seized Moscow. Alexander refused to surrender. Alexander didn't really have to surrender. There was quite a bit of Russia outside, on the other side of Moscow. The Russians could afford a retreat, as this portrait depicts. He, for some reason, decided to invade in winter, too. Didn't work out well. So the bitterly cold weather, the disease, the Russian attacks absolutely decimated the Grand Army as it retreated. Marshal Ney, in other words, it's a step above general. The army marches covered in great snowflakes. The stragglers fall to the lances of the Cossacks. Just Russian warriors, think of it that way. As for me, I cover the retreat. Behind files the army with broken ranks. It is a mob without purpose, famished, feverish. General Famine and General Winter, rather than the Russian bullets, have conquered the Grand Army. So, big mistake. A lot of French died, not at the hands of the enemy, but because of the weather, because of disease, because of things that could have easily been avoided. The supply train, right, wasn't a train back then, it was wagons, was stretched very thin. It was very easy for Russians to attack that. cut off or seriously disrupt French supplies. It was a disaster. And that is really what ended Napoleon. He went on for a while longer, but this is what ended it. 600,000 plus in the Grand Army, 570,000 dead or captured, 30,000 remaining. That was it that made it back to France. Emptied France of men. So the Grand Alliance in 1813 of Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Nations. And we're not quite done yet, although he is on his way to being defeated. It takes until the next March for the Allied armies to enter Paris. And Napoleon begins his first exile on the island of Elba, and the Allies were content to let him keep the title of emperor. The Allies were content to make Elba his principality, his empire, if you will. What I learned recently was that while he was emperor of Elba, they actually conquered a small island very near to where Elba is situated. The island didn't have anybody living on it. It was a deserted rock, but just the same, Napoleon was keeping his skills fresh. The Allied powers, having declared that Emperor Napoleon was the sole obstacle to the restoration of peace in Europe, Emperor Napoleon, faithful to his oath, declares that he renounces for himself and his heirs, Napoleon II, the thrones of France and Italy, and that there is no personal sacrifice, even that of his life, which he is not ready to do in the interest of France, says the Treaty of Fontainebleau. So that's it for a minute. And a minute really is about a grand total of 9 to 10 months before he comes back. He escapes from Elba. He forms a new army. He didn't form entirely a new army. Men were allowed to come with him into exile. If I'm remembering, it was 300 to 400 men. He got off the boat in France and on French soil, which was so important to him. He marched along with his little ragtag group of soldiers, ran into the regular French army, which had just sworn allegiance to and made an oath to protect the newly restored Bourbon dynasty. He goes out in front of them, basically says, "I am your emperor." He opens his jacket up. I mean, very dramatic. "I am your emperor." The order to fire is made. No one complies. And he's back in business. They all join him. Doesn't last too long, because in June 1815, he's sent to St. Helena after his defeat at the Battle of Waterloo. So he's forced to abdicate for a second time as Emperor of the French, and he's exiled to St. Helena in the South Atlantic, where he dies in 1821. And there's all sorts of theories floating around about that. Was he poisoned? Yeah. Did he die of natural causes? I don't know that we'll ever really have an answer that satisfies everybody. There it is. Let me zoom in on that. This tiny little dot here, somewhere between Africa and South America. This is a monument in Paris. I'm going to butcher it. Les Invalides. It was designed to essentially be a care home for veterans. And this is where you find that. Napoleon's tomb. He wasn't originally allowed to be buried in France, and it took a long time, but King Louis Philippe, I'm looking it up as I'm talking to you, King Louis Philippe decided to move him there. 1840. No, excuse me. The 2nd of April, 1861. The 2nd of April, 1861, he was finally laid to rest in his tomb in Les Invalides. And there ends the story of the French Revolution, at least for now. All right. Thanks for hanging in there.